Welcome. I am India Davis, and I'm with the India Davis real estate team, Keller Williams, and I wanted to introduce Selena Ward with Benchmark Mortgage.
Hi, everybody.
She is going to be, doing half the presentation with us today and just kind of talking through a lot of the meat of what you came to learn with some of the lending process and all of those good things. So, but I will go ahead and get started. We are definitely going to try to keep it less than an hour so you guys can go about your day and get to your Saturday. But let me go ahead and share my screen so that we can get started here. All right, and let's see here, move this over and present. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right.
Hey, India, before we
Yes.
get started, let's use the chat box with our guest. So if you have any questions, please don't either write them down or drop them in the chat so that way we can talk about it. Because what we have found by doing hundreds, I don't know, it feels like thousands of consultations with clients, is that it's going to provoke questions. So there's no such thing as a silly question, and everybody's circumstance is different. So drop your questions down, or you can send them directly to me and then we'll talk about them.
All right. And I'm going to unmute you guys so that if you need to, say anything, you can certainly, let's see, maybe. Well,
there we go.
Okay, perfect. All right. So, okay. All right. So, starting off with the home buying process, it is important that you work with people that you trust and that you value, and that you know kind of what they bring to the table. So that is something really important to me with my clients, is that we have, a proper consultation and we really understand kind of what my role is as your realtor, your representative, your educator, and what your expectations are, and that we are definitely on the same page, because that's really important in this process. It's a very big decision when you decide that you're going to buy a home, and I want to make sure that we're very clear together on what that looks like in terms of what I do for you and what your expectations are, and that we communicate. So finding the right agent is super important. And then once we come to an agreement, there's some documentation that does have to be signed kind of before we start working together. And it just really spells out what that looks like and what my job for you is, and then what the expectations are for you all as well as clients, to just be communicating with me and keeping things timely, because that is very important throughout the process of buying a home. Secondary to that, or actually kind of, I would say right along with that, is finding the right lender. Most people are going to buy a home using a loan. And so finding a lender that is also educating you, communicating with you, and making sure that you understand exactly what's needed. And when it comes down to the final closing, that there's no surprises that, all of a sudden you didn't know about something. So that's really important. And when we start that process, when someone reaches out to me and says, hey, I'm looking to start the process of buying a home, one of the very first things that I do is connect them with a lender. Selena and I partner together all the time. We have a great relationship and I trust her and her team very much. So most of the time I'm going to send my clients directly to her to start that process. And that's really important, because we really can't start the process of looking for homes until you know exactly financially what you qualify for and what your buying power is. And that's where that pre-approval comes in. Right, let's go on to the next one. Oops, it's taking me back. Okay, there we go. So when we start our search, there's several different ways that I can help my clients find their properties that they might be looking for. Of course, I'm going to kind of get some information from you regarding, what it is that are your wants and your criteria. That is going to look like, of course, budget, area, size of home, different features that you're looking for. Do you need a yard? How many garage spaces do you need? Things like that. And I'm going to set up a search in our multiple listing service, which is the MLS. I also have the opportunity to look for off-market properties, and our brokerage, Keller Williams, has a service that's called private collection. And so other agents, myself included, might put a home on our site that's called private collection, and we can market it to one another. There's about 600 or 700 agents in my office, and we might be able to find you a property off market that other agents in the DFW Metroplex haven't even had a chance to show their clients. So it's a great way to potentially see additional homes that aren't listed on the MLS, just to give more options and more variety. And it's just one of the value adds that I can bring to my clients, so that it's just giving additional opportunity. And one thing I like to mention to people is, my job as a realtor isn't necessarily to find your home, especially in this day and age. So many options for clients and buyers to be looking for homes. They look on homes.com, realtor.com, Zillow, all the different sites, and you may very well find a home before you get it on your search. And that's great, because I think, working together is exactly what we want. But my main job isn't to find you a home, it's to help you through the process once we figure out that that is going to be the property that we might potentially make an offer on, and all of the steps that come, thereafter. I do my very best to help you weed out some of the homes and figure out, what's going to be a great fit. But there are chances in which, you as a buyer might find a home and send it to me and say, hey, let's go look at this. And so we definitely work together during that. All right, so there's a lot of words on this slide, but I'm going to talk about the main bullet points, really. Some of the things that I do during that process of, once we've actually kind of identified a property that you're interested in, before ever writing an offer, I would run a CMA, which is a competitive market analysis. And that is done so that we can tell whether or not the price that it's listed at is really the value of that home. So I'm trying to figure out how an appraiser would place value on that home. And I want to do that for any property that we're looking at seriously before we write an offer, so that we know if, the offer that we submit maybe is we put it under list because that's what the value shows, or maybe we know that it is already listed under value. And so it might be a competitive situation where maybe we need to offer over list because there's multiple offers. So that is something very important to do with every property that you are potentially interested in, because we want to make sure that the value is correct. Negotiations, that's one of my main jobs and main values to you as your realtor, is that I will, negotiate a contract and make sure that I'm getting you the very best possible value for any home that we make an offer on. And it doesn't just mean sale price. It can mean other strategic value added things within that contract. So it can mean the amount of days for an option period for you to get inspections, or potentially concessions that a seller might pay back to you at closing, or potentially a close date. Maybe it's important for you to close on August 1st rather than July 31st because of when your first loan payment might be due. So those are things that we certainly all take into effect. And, with my experience, I know that certain things can add value for you, and other things can add value for a seller. So depending on how we're writing that offer, it's important for her to keep those things in mind. kind of goes along with those value adds. So we want to make sure that our offer is the whole package. And sometimes, depending on the market, we're going to write an offer that, you know, really protects you and makes sure that you get as most as you can out of that offer. And other times we're going to be competing against 2 or 3 other offers. And in order to make our offer the top and the, you know, the preferred offer, we might have to add some additional value adds in for the seller so that they look at our offer as more valuable. Seller concessions is another one that's really very useful to you as a buyer. A seller concession is something that the seller pays back to you at closing, and it can help cover several things. So it can help cover potentially if you needed to buy your rate down. There's buy down programs that do require that the seller pay for them. Selena might talk about those a little bit here in a minute. There's potential that they contribute towards some of your closing costs, or potentially towards some of the repairs that they might offer, you know, seller concessions in lieu of repairs. The inspection negotiations, again, that's all part of my job, is to make sure that you as a buyer are protected, and, you know, that we are negotiating the very best for you, and that, you know, anything that comes up on that inspection report that's concerning to you, that, you know, we're negotiating with the seller to get some of those things taken care of before you actually buy the home. And then finally, the last step is really, once we get to a couple days before closing, guiding you through some of the closing disclosures and making sure that you understand exactly what's needed for you to bring to the closing table. And that if there's, you know, some of it's very confusing, and it can be just a lot of lines and numbers to look at. So I do help you guys go through that and make sure that there's no questions. Selena is also going to be a partner in that as well, going through those closing disclosures and making sure that everybody's really clear on that. All right. So one of my last things that I like to talk about is that inspection process. So once you get a home, an offer accepted on a property, the first usually about 7 days of that process is what we call our option period. And during that option period is when you would have the home inspected, and you would hire a general inspector primarily. And then if there are additional things that you thought also needed a more specified inspection, you could do a separate roof inspection or a separate foundation inspection if needed. But first thing first, you would hire an inspector, and then you choose some of the packages that you want. So some of them offer extra things that they could add on. Like if your home had a pool, obviously you would also want to have the pool inspected. They sometimes will offer like an infrared type inspection where they shoot their infrared camera at the walls and make sure that everything is insulated properly and there's no moisture or anything like that. So the different inspectors will have slightly different packages, and you can choose, you know, whatever works for you. During that inspection, the main 5 things that I always like to focus on, and I tell my buyers to focus on, is the roof, the foundation, the plumbing, the electrical systems, and then the HVAC, which is the heating and air system. Those are going to be like the big 5, and they're usually the most costly when something is wrong. So those are the things that it's important to really focus on, so that, you know, if there is something of concern in one of those 5 areas, that those might be the things that we're asking for in terms of a repair request. I do like to make sure that buyers know that, you know, that report's going to be really long. It always is. It's just about, you know, 35, 40 pages long. And it's important for us to kind of keep an open mind and just know that that's how they all are. It's not unusual to that particular home. And there's going to be things that we're just not going to ask the seller to repair. Lots of cosmetic things might come up in that report. And typically those aren't the things that you're going to focus on. You're going to focus on kind of the larger ticket items. So I help you review the inspection report, and then we draft an amendment that asks the seller potentially to repair anywhere between 1 and 5 or 6 things. I like to keep it kind of short, so we're not asking for 25 repairs. But we do, ask them to repair a handful of things, and then we negotiate back and forth until everybody is in agreement that those are the things that they're going to take care of before closing. And the expectation there is that they hire a licensed contractor that's either a plumber or an electrician or an HVAC or foundation or whatever it might be to do the repairs, and then they send us the pictures and the invoices and receipts prior to closing so we can make sure that those things are done. And then the biggest advice that I can give is that everyone just remain calm and reasonable during that process. I will tell you that the week of inspection is the toughest week, just because everybody's a little bit on edge. It's a little bit hard to see that long report and just have a little insecurity about, oh my gosh, like what's really wrong with this house, or what does all this mean? Because it's a little bit out of people's comfort zone in most respects. So my job is to just keep everybody calm and reasonable and make sure that you feel confident in what we're asking for in terms of the repairs, and that you still feel good about the home, and all of those things. So that's a little bit about that process. My last slide is talking about some upfront costs. The first two kind of go together. The earnest money is going to be due within 3 days of an executed contract, and it is typically 1% of the sale price of the home. So just for example, if you were buying a $400,000 home, the earnest money in that respect would be about $4,000 that would be due within 3 days. And it's basically a deposit. It gets paid to the title company and they hold it in escrow. And then that money does get applied back to you at closing. So it's not going to the seller, it's your deposit, but it is something that is required within 3 days of executing a contract. The option fee is another smaller deposit that basically allows you the 5, 7, 10 days to have that option period so that you can have the home inspected and we can negotiate repairs. It usually is between $100 and $500. That also is due within 3 days and does get deposited to the title company to hold until we get to closing, and it gets deposited back to you as the buyer. In the event that you were to terminate a contract during the option period, the option fee would be the amount of money that you would risk losing. So during that week-long period, if we have an inspection done and you're just not feeling good about what you see, and you have some doubts and you just don't feel like it's the right home and you want to terminate, we have 100% right to terminate during that option period time. And the option fee money would be what you would lose. So that smaller amount of money, about $100 to $500, depending on what we negotiated on the contract, would go to the seller if we terminated. The inspection cost is paid up front to the inspector. It can range usually between about $400 and $800, depending on the package that you choose. And then the appraisal fee, which Selena might talk about a little bit, but it is something that a lender is going to require for a home to be appraised. And there is a fee that has to be paid for the appraisal to be done. That cost is usually between $450 and $600. So those are the 4 things that you kind of want to keep in mind in terms of the upfront costs. All right, so that is really what I had to share. Do y'all have any questions about anything that you heard there that I can answer for you before Selena takes over and talks about what she's got?
Hey, India. I think my biggest questions are around like closing costs, because online it's like the seller pays it, the buyer pays it, it's 3%, it's 5% of the sale price, and I
Yeah.
just like because I'm like, okay, great, the down payment's $70K, okay, but then you got to pay all the closing costs, and what are those? And like I said, I don't know who pays for it, so I don't know if you can go into any more detail around closing costs.
Yeah, that's a great question. I will talk a little bit about it, and then I think Selena can share a little bit about it as well. Typically, the closing costs, some of it possibly can be negotiated where a seller might contribute to it. But I think going into the situation or into the buying process, you do need to calculate those closing costs as if, that was going to be a buying expense. What goes into closing costs is going to be, some of your costs for homeowners insurance, property taxes, and what they call reserves. So you are going to be asked to pay, a couple of months of reserves into your escrow account as part of your closing costs so that your escrow account would never dip below zero, and it would be short. So Selena can share a little bit more about that, but if I'm correct in saying, Selena, it's usually between 2 and 3% of the sale price of the home that you would want to kind of calculate for closing costs. That's in addition to a down payment, what your down payment amount is.
Yeah, I think that's such a great question. It comes up all the time. Depending on what the sales price is of the home, say that it's 330,000 and up. I would say that your closing cost and also what India had mentioned about the prepaids. Those prepaids for taxes and insurance, you're paying 15 months of insurance at closing because three months has to go into the escrow. India's right. There's 2 months that have to go in there, but you don't make a payment the first month after you close. So you're skipping that first month before the first payment kicks in. And so we're collecting that month. So you don't have a shortage when those things come due out of that escrow account. Next time it comes due, you're not having to write a check. It's coming out of your escrow. You just need to manage your escrow. So the consultations I do with you are going to teach you what you need to know about escrow and how to manage them. So yes, you're having to put back, your reserves as prepaids for your insurance and your taxes, and you're paying a whole year's worth of insurance at closing. So you've got your down payment, you have your closing cost, and then you have your prepaids. Your closing costs, guys, are people's very, very important jobs. It's the title company, it's the appraiser, it's the surveyor, it's the inspector, it is the mortgage company, it is attorneys, it's recording your documents at the courthouse, it's mortgage, it's all these things. And so it's hard to tell you, okay, without showing, hey, this is every little thing. And sometimes even then it's like the first time you'll see it with me, you'll be like, okay, I needed to see all that because it's going to show up again. But it's going to be specific to what it is that you want to accomplish through your mortgage. Like what sales price, what area, is it in an HOA? Are there special assessments that we need to know about? All of these things can change. So we're here to help you with that. But I would say 10 to 14,000 would be your additional prepaids and closing cost. Okay, at least 10. I wouldn't say any less than 10. So that's just a really good rule of thumb. Is just have that money saved if you can. Okay.
Yeah.
And we're
And
going
a
to talk
lot of
about
it, I was going to say a lot of it, like Selena said, is going to depend on where the home's located and what the property taxes are in that particular area. If it is part of an HOA and what the HOA fees are, because that will go into it. What the homeowners insurance rate that you're getting at that time of purchase and kind of what that cost is. So all of that factors in to, the closing costs, because the reserves are really what is most of that cost. And then some things are negotiable in terms of how we write the contract. There are some options for, a seller to contribute to some of those closing costs if that's something that we write into an offer. And then Selena has some programs as well that are like down payment assistance programs that could be something that you would qualify for, which would potentially offer some funds that could help with some of the down payment type monies as well.
Good point.
Does that make sense?
Yep. No, that was great. Thank y'all. I was kind of I was expecting like 10 to 15,000 in closing costs. So what y'all said was perfect.
Yeah, excellent.
Good.
All right, well, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so that Selena then can share her screen with y'all. And then I'll manage the chat. So if you guys have any questions while she's speaking, just put it in the chat and then we can kind of talk about it at the end or various times throughout.
I think I have to request you to allow multiple sharings. Do you know how to do that?
Let's see. I'm going to say allow, make a host. Okay, I just made you the host, and so maybe you can now share.
Yep, it looks like it. Great, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so please let me know if you are able to see my screen okay. Am I sharing the proper screen here?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, thank you, because I have 3 screens and I'm not that cool. Okay, I just can't see very well. But I get really jazzed up. It's good to be here. My name is Selena Ward. I got started in real estate when I was super young, and I just fell in love with the feeling of helping buyers buy their home. Guys, if it feels like you have a lot of emotions about this, can I just tell you, it's okay if one of those emotions is excitement. Indy and I feel this on every one of our clients. We really get a front row seat at helping make dreams come true for people. And so I started in 2001, and I've only ever helped buyers buy homes for 23 years. I started selling homes for D.R. Horton in North Fort Worth back at a time where there was nothing north of Burlington and Railroad off Western Center. There was nothing north of there. I could not have painted this picture. It's way bigger, and we're part of something way bigger. And I feel like by getting to share this time with you, I can help educate you to make decisions that maybe financially don't need to be emotional. Buying a home gets to be emotional. Your finances should not be emotional, because when you or have an uncertainty or lack of clarity, it paralyzes you. And the paralyzation can take people away from their dreams for years. And we're going to talk about, what this benefit looks like of buying a home, and then kind of the detriments when people are in that paralyzed state. So I've been at Benchmark Mortgage since 2013. I can't sit and tell you, wow, I'm like the greatest loan officer in America, but I do try to be. And honest to God, I have the best team ever. We're built on success, relationships, dynamic excellence, and positive attitude. That is the Benchmark Mortgage core values. I'm a military spouse, so core values are very important in our home. But I'm so thankful to be on the best team ever. And I formed this team several years ago. And so we have a lot of wonderful people here that help us. One of the things I really wanted to make sure of, having been a real estate agent, okay, in like 2008, 9, and then getting into lending in 2010, I just realized that my clients had a lot of questions about mortgage, and they didn't understand what kind of mortgage they had. They didn't know what to do with it, and they really lacked education. And so therefore the Dodd-Frank Act was born. And I won't get into all of that, but this is basically where, a lot of your aunts and uncles and parents said, forget mortgage. It just got a lot harder and we don't want anything to do with it. And so there's more rules and protections now for consumers than ever before. And although I don't always like a lot of guidelines, we don't add any extra guidelines here at Benchmark. So if Fannie Mae would make that loan, if HUD would make that loan, if VA would make that loan, we just underwrite according to the guidelines. That's it. And so what we do is we make sure we understand our clients. So this free consultation is really important, because guess what? I don't need all of your stuff. Sometimes I just need enough of your stuff to be able to back up the application that we build together. That application is like, it's basically the key to your dream of buying a home. We're looking at a sales price. We're looking at a down payment. We're looking at a loan amount that you're comfortable with. And then we have to make sure that we have the right documentation to support that application. So sometimes what happens is we just think this is going to be so much harder than it needs to be. Yes, I help a lot of first-time home buyers. I still get giddy about this. So like, I pair up really well with a first-time home buyer because I feel the excitement. But I think homeownership and education go hand in hand always, because the market can change. And so, we want to make sure we're taking care of our people and really truly getting to know them. So it's kind of hard sometimes to say, oh, wow, look at our reviews, but I'm telling you, I have an amazing team and we truly get to know our people. And that's through the consultation. Now, who is who and what do they do? It's so funny building a class like this with India, because it's like, yep. All those people are a part of this process. Okay. So I'm the lender. My job is to help you build the perfect mortgage strategy in a budget that you can live with, that you can feel that this house is going to be a blessing to you. And so that makes my position very, very strategic. Also, I get a bird's eye view over a lot of things. I'm working with the real estate agents, both the listing agent and the buyer's agent. I never talk to the seller, and you won't either, but there's realtors that represent these parties. And so how we work in tandem with each other is very, very important. It's important even in a way that I represent you in a way that's professional, because they're looking at your pre-approval letter, they're looking at your lender, and they want to know, are you going to get this closed on time? Do you know what you're doing? How do you and India work together? Because guess what? Deals fall apart every day. So I'm going to tell you that going online and getting a pre-approval letter is easy. But if you haven't given your documents, you're not truly pre-approved. And if you haven't sat down in a consultation, then you're not really sure even what to do with that letter. And India and I see a lot of transactions that tend to fall apart, not ours. We don't have this problem because we have a very strategic plan that we make sure that we mold for you in this process. But when other deals fall apart, when India's listing a house and the buyer's mortgage falls apart, I usually get a chance to talk to people at that time, at that crucial time, because we do have a lot of Google reviews. And so people will find me when they're asking key questions, and they'll be like, hey, here's the situation. And it always is obvious that it lacked a plan from the beginning. So these folks right here really want to know you got a plan and that you can execute on it, and you're going to be able to do that in 30 days. The title company is a third party that's going to take in all the monies. Okay, so your earnest money, that deposit that India told you, that goes to the title company. When we fund your loan, that goes to the title company. When you bring money for your mortgage, you don't ever give it to me. Don't bring a pocket full of cash in here to me. I can't do anything with it, but we're going to get it collected at closing, and it's going to go into the escrow at the title company. Title companies are very important because you wouldn't buy a car if you didn't have a clear title. You certainly wouldn't buy a house. And so that means that India and I have to be really, really skilled and looking at this title work and understanding and making sure that there's nothing that's going to prevent the ownership from properly transferring over to you. Home inspectors, I think, are the coolest people because I don't know how many things they inspect, but it's like thousands. And so I'm glad that's not what I do, but India has wonderful people that have really proven themselves to be great at this. And so I would always say you go to your expert and let them guide you on how to tackle these things and make sense of it and keep it smooth and easy, and sometimes even enjoyable. Sometimes it's not so bad. So when you're going through your home inspections and things like that, just a lot of information. The last thing is the homeowner's insurance agent, and that is somebody that we're working with. India works with the home inspector, but I'm working with your insurance agent. And I already mentioned we collect a lot of insurance at closing. So we really need to make sure that we get their name, their number, and let us know who you have chosen, and then we'll take it from there. Okay, so now that we know who's who and what everybody does, we're going to talk a little bit about the market. This is my most favorite thing to talk about. Maybe it's because I'm an old realtor at heart, or I just appreciate the process so much. But certainly over 23 years, people have asked me, where is rock bottom? When's the right time to buy? Okay. So a lot of people are kind of sitting on the sidelines right now, and they're really trying to gauge, like, when's the right time? And the problem with rock bottom is sometimes as a consumer, you don't know that was the best time until it gets harder. Okay. And harder to buy, that is. So what creates the market to get harder? Well, interest rates, but that's something that we've been dealing with now for a couple of years. So we know how to gain back some empowerment over that by how we strategically plan our budget, okay? Because rates can change. But more so what I'm talking about is that after we've hit rock bottom, sales prices start going back up. The seller gains a lot more confidence because there's a lot more competition. And what we know creates competition is more buyers. And what we know is that there's always a lot of buyers here in North Texas. Things are not unhealthy. The market is very healthy. Everything's coming in and making value. I mean, I'm just not having low appraisal issues, and I haven't in a long time. The market is holding value. It is more so about inventory and how many homes there were to look at, and then also what interest rates were doing. Right now, and India can tell you guys more in a consultation with her, there's more inventory than we've had in a long time. It's not a lot more, but it's enough to be able to show you that you can get a good home at a fair price without having to overpay. When interest rates come down, there will be a lot of buyers entering back into the market, and they're going to be scooping up that inventory. And so, we want to make sure that we're on the right side of, the plan here. And that is that we're working with sellers when you have a little bit less competition. A little bit less competition may mean that the home sits on the market for 30 days, 45 days, and they don't have an offer. When we're in multiple offers, homes go under contract in a matter of days with multiple buyers on them. And then you're having to bring more money to closing, making it harder for you to enter into the marketplace. Okay, now this works for everybody. This is important for everyone to know. Unless you're selling a home and buying another home, you don't have anything that's hedging against appreciation. You don't have anything that's like dollar for dollar building for you to make an even swap on this and be able to offset the higher cost with a bigger down payment because you're selling a house. So the entry point, very important for me as your mortgage strategist, because we got to figure out where can we enter in with the least amount of money out of pocket. And it's always going to be when homes are sitting a little bit longer, because we're able to negotiate maybe some terms that are a little bit easier for you. Maybe it's just $5,000 of closing cost. Maybe it's $10,000 if a home's been sitting, for an even extended amount of time, because maybe it's a unique home and it just hasn't had any offers. But this is really important to be on the right side of the market, so that way you're kind of building your own plan and you're taking your own shots. You're not getting knocked around in these multiple offer scenarios. Now, what causes multiple offers? I know I mentioned to you, it might be inventory, it might be interest rates. Certainly those things are playing a huge role. But really, it's because in 1990, there was this major baby boom equivalent to the baby boomers. And we had the millennials, the birth of the millennials. And in 1990, it was the biggest peak of household formations and growing household formations and things of that nature. And today, that makes our millennials 33 and 34 years old. And we need more housing than we've ever had before. And we'll need even more sustainable housing moving forward, just because of how big generations are getting and being at that age to buy homes. I want you guys to just really look at the last 4 years, and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. There's more household formations than there are homes on the market for sale. So this is really just about simple economics, supply and demand. And when we go back and we look at other extreme cases where maybe home values went down and really, was a delight, a frenzy for buyers, we're really not seeing that. There's still some squeeze and some competition for sure in the marketplace. So again, if we find an easy entry point, we need to figure out how to pursue becoming homeowners at that time, where we can kind of navigate some of these. Look, we have a shortage of inventory, but not enough homes being started. A lot of people do keep their focus on 2008 because they saw that home values went down. And the reason why home values went down is because there were twice the amount of homes on the market as there were buyers to buy. That's so extreme. It's never happened before, and it's never happened again. But I think what's interesting to note is there was never a time really in history where values did come down after we saw incredible rises. 15% in one year, 16 in another, 14 in another. So if people are thinking, well, the home market has to be in a bubble. It has to turn around. It has to come back down. This is where people lose the most amount of momentum and wealth. In the last 40 years, we've seen the most, or in the last 4 months, we've seen, let me back up. In the last 4 years, we've seen the most extreme interest rates we've ever seen in all of US history. And yet we are still seeing property values go up. Over the last 4 years, we've seen 40% increase of equity. And again, just go back to simple economics. The problem has not been solved. It's just that because higher interest rates are among us, people are really reluctant about buying a home because they're believing that something's going to change and they're going to be able to get a good deal, a better deal than what they're seeing, and they'll have better interest rates, so they're going to wait. The other
Selena,
thing that,
real quick, sorry to interrupt you, but are these local numbers or are these national numbers?
these are national. So we're gonna dig into that a little bit, but these are national numbers. I will tell you 2023 was 7% and 2024 is still on track for 7%. And 19%, I would say was probably pretty close in line with where we were here in India, because the amount of jobs that we have in Texas during COVID really brought a lot of people here. But the thing I really want to point out is that I remember here in the early 2000s when interest rates went from the 8s to the 6s. I certainly remember this housing market right here in the 2020 to 2022. And I will tell you that when interest rates are low, there is a huge spike of buyers. Okay, so it's great when you're on the right side of this, because if you owned a home, then you gained a lot of equity during that time. Okay, but some of those sellers are okay selling their home and giving you a little bit of something to make it a little bit easier or entice you to make an offer on their home, because they did gain 40% of equity. Now, so when we look at national data, the average market might be 3%. Certainly in Texas, an average market for us would be 5%. But based on the information I just shared with you and seeing double digits of appreciation, I just kept it at 7%. So if we were to buy a home today at $400,000 and we just watched the appreciation at a very reasonable average over 5 years, that same home would be worth $561,000. Okay. And that's just at a 7% appreciation. So when people decide that they don't want to buy a home at the moment and they're going to go back to renewing their lease, we really have to look at what the cost is year over year, never mind what we're throwing away on rent, but just really what the wealth appreciation is that we're losing out on. And we can see that just in 2 years, that would be close to $60,000. Let's just say that someone did set out. Let's just say that, you know, they were going to buy a house in 2020 and they decided not to. And let's just say that the average appreciation was, you know, only 7% each year and not 10 like we've seen. And let's just say that we get into 2025 and we basically like kick the can down the road and then look back and say, wow, what did that cost us in payment to wait for the interest rates to return to where they were maybe in 2020? For every $1,000, never mind taxes and insurance and things like that, which, believe it or not, you get some homestead exemptions and some caps on some of those. So when you're renting, the payment keeps going up. Landlords don't have caps on their homestead exemptions like you have when it's your primary home. But if you were to calculate an extra $161,000 into your sales price, or let's just call it loan amount, that would be $966 more in your payment. So the people that are really like set to lose the most are the ones that have been setting the longest. The longer you set, the more you lose. The problem with the interest rate is that there's really not a way to get the interest rate back to where you're saving $1,000 a month. Maybe in some cases it's $400 or $500, maybe $600, maybe more, depending on the loan amount. But the amount of appreciation that we're missing out on not only is preventing us from growing household wealth, but it's also showing up in our mortgage payment. Okay, so I think this is the biggest aha for people, India, because by the time we're having a conversation like this, there's an inkling of an idea that, hey, this is taking too long. We need to probably go ahead and get more information on doing this. And they're right on. I mean, what a great observation. Once we realize, like, hey, it might be a good time with less competition to enter into the market, we need to think about a few things that show up on the mortgage pre-approval side. And that's going to be your assets, your credit history, your debt, your employment, and your income. Your credit, your assets anyway, can be funds you already have saved. They can be your retirement funds. They can be checking, savings, CDs. They could be trust funds. They could come from a parent or a direct relative. Veterans even have some additional options for assets, but assets are important because this is where your cash to close comes from. Okay, so we're going to source where the cash to close is being pulled from. And so, you know, we like to make sure that we help prepare people for what that might look like if you're moving money around. We want 2 months of bank statements on all asset accounts. Credit history. Credit has muscle memory. It wants to improve. It is actually more like a helium balloon. It actually wants to go up. So when I talk to people and they're like, you know, my credit, that just makes me more determined to figure out what is holding it down. Because if you haven't seen a copy of your credit report, and most people haven't, you might be surprised how some of these things work. So sometimes there are little corrections that can be made that can make a major impact. If you're using a down payment assistance program, the minimum credit score is 620. And if you're looking at conventional financing, which is just one type of loan, it's also a 620, but other loan programs could go under 620. Your debt. I'm going to say debt and income ratio go side by side. In fact, it's called your DTI, your debt to income. So your income is very important, but it's being married up against your current debt. So your debt would be anything that shows up as a loan or a line of credit could show up as a debt. That could also include student loans. Your employment, I think people are most often surprised. You don't have to have worked the same job for 2 years to be able to use new employment. Things like overtime, commission, bonus, certainly those types of incomes need to be averaged. Remember, I mentioned that there was a new law that went into effect after 2008 called the Dodd-Frank Act. And they spell out each and every one of these categories as guidelines in how we must document to show proof of the application. So we want to make sure we're doing a valid job collecting the right information from you, making that super simple to understand what we need, but also verifying and confirming the income, because this is where I feel like most loan officers struggle. So we want to pre-underwrite your file up front by doing a thorough job, looking at these documents and truly determining what the correct debt to income ratio is, just like an underwriter would. And then we're running automated underwriting up front on these things. Okay, so that application needs to be correct. And, you know, I think this is where building the perfect mortgage plan really depends on what these items might look like in your scenario. Okay, and sometimes it may mean that we need to strengthen some of these items or some of these categories, or maybe we just need to come up with, you know, a plan that works better. Sometimes life changes, and so the plans change with it, meaning like maybe we have new opportunity for income or employment, or maybe somebody wants to give us a gift. Whatever it is, that is where the true magic comes in. And it's a lot of fun to get to work alongside you, wherever you are, It's important to just start where you're at. Credit, I want to take a brief second to talk about, because people get really confused about credit, and rightfully so. There are over 50 different credit grading cards. So what you're seeing on your Discover card, what you see on Chase, what you see on MyFICO, what you see on Credit Karma, all different scores. Okay, it's really confusing. And honestly, it's so confusing. I can't even tell you why anyone thought that was a good idea, but that's the way it works. Mortgage has a completely different algorithm, as you would expect. So do auto loans. the algorithm with mortgage lending is this. 35% of your credit is based on how your bills are paid. So paying on time is really important. If you've had late pays, like if you're behind now, you really need to get caught up and you need to get away from that type of reporting on your credit by a few months, maybe even more. But in some cases, you might have a recent late pay and it really doesn't impact you because maybe you have a more proportioned credit portfolio that can kind of help aid in that support and still maintaining a decent credit score. Your length of credit is how long you've had credit lines open. And can I just tell you, you really don't need to pay off a credit card and then close it out. You don't want to do that because 15% of your credit is based on the length of those accounts being established. The type of credit would be like maybe a credit card and maybe an installment loan. Okay. So sometimes if people only have like, say, a car loan and they have no credit cards, they could really benefit by maybe opening some credit cards. And then obviously new credit accumulation. So when you're opening lines of credit, don't be surprised if your credit score actually goes down, maybe even by as much as like 30 points, because now you have a new line of credit that has no payment histories attached to it. So as you're making payments over, say, 6 months or more, you'll start to really see credit starting to accumulate. And then I cannot stress this enough. In fact, it's one of the biggest on the pie chart, and that is that the amount that you owe on your revolving credit is uber important. So there are some thresholds in there where maybe if you paid it down under this percentage of utilization or under this one, that you would start to see as you pay the balance down that you're getting a bigger and faster lift in your credit score. You don't need to have a perfect credit score. Okay, so I would say rather than waiting for everything to look perfect and then entering into the housing market, maybe we need to just see how much would that really save us and what could it potentially cost us if we wait too long and we can't even ask the seller for closing cost anymore because maybe we are in multiple offers again. But this is where I think a lot of people may be a little bit confused about credit, and that's just making sure that you're leaving those accounts open. With your revolving credit cards, you want to keep a balance on it. Don't pay it to zero and leave it. Okay. Other things to avoid after you're pre-approved, don't go changing your bank accounts and moving your money all around. Remember that we had to verify assets. So we don't want anything to jeopardize how we have the application and your perfect plan set up. Don't apply for any new credit cards. There is actually a quality control check about your credit. It's a soft credit pull, oftentimes, depending on the loan type at the end. That's not the time that your mortgage team wants to find out that you opened a credit card. Okay. And don't show up to a home inspection with India in a brand new car.
And this is really important. I think a lot of times people get really excited toward the end of the home buying process and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go out and buy new furniture because I don't have furniture for this new home. And they don't exactly think about, like, you go to Nebraska Furniture Mart and they say, oh, well, if you open a credit card with us, we'll give you 10% off. And you're like, great. Well, that counts against your credit. And then on the closing day, they actually run back credit. And it shows of a new open account, and that could really affect things. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind. Washers and dryers, appliances, furniture, like all of that is going to count against your credit unless you pay cash. So just be careful about those things, or just ask a question before you do that, because then Selena or I could be able to be like, okay, well, that amount would be okay, but this amount is not okay, or opening a new account would not work. So it's something just to kind of keep in mind.
That's so good. Yep. So don't co-sign for anybody. Don't make any major purchases. I'm not saying like there's not extras that you can do that. I'm saying that when you're building a plan that's so specific to what you want to accomplish, these are major components. So let's have a conversation about it. Right. So, yeah. I want to also put up my QR code right here, and all my contact information, because it really does start with a conversation about you. I can tell you more things than you ever cared to know about mortgage. I mean, unless you're as nerdy as I am. I don't even, I don't think that, I definitely didn't know this much as a realtor, and that's not anything against India because she's such a great realtor. But my point is we stay in our lanes. And so my lane is your budget, your comfortability. So that's going to start with you in mind and your finances in mind. And that's going to start with a pre-approval and then a consultation. My office is in North Richland Hills, so you're welcome to come to North Richland Hills. I would love to see you because I do Zoom all the time. And if you came in person, it would be like a party because we would get to see real people. And so we really enjoy getting to know you. There are different programs. I didn't dig a lot into that because, again, it's very specific for you. But I will tell you, if you are looking for minimal out-of-pocket expense with low down payments, down payment assistance programs, seller paying closing costs, VA loans with no down payment, 100% financing, all of that's available. So the idea is that we work closely with India to come up with the right terms in the contract to bring those types of negotiations back to your mortgage to help save you money and keep as much money in your pocket as possible. And then we're going to need to talk about a future refinance. I'm telling you that now because guess what? Most everybody in America has done a refinance. So your mortgage company can do your purchase and then do your refinance. And we'll talk about how much money that's going to save you and what that process looks like, because you don't have a down payment again the next time. So, you know, it's an opportunity to reduce the interest rate and get the payment back in line. So I'm going to help you identify what your desired sales price is based on your monthly payment and your out-of-pocket expense, and then your future refinance interest rate and new improved payment. So we'll talk about all those things, but I hope this was helpful today. And I am, we're going to leave the floor open for questions. So if I've said anything that maybe provoked a thought, I'd love to hear some feedback about it.
You have any questions?
I don't really have any questions. You're the question guy.
I guess the only question I had is in terms of interest rates when it comes to your credit score. I mean, there's going to be like no difference, like say, like between like an 800 and like an 820, right? Credit score. There's going to be really no difference between those two in terms of interest rate. I just don't know when the interest rate starts going up or down in relation to the credit score changing.
Oh, that's a great question. Let me kind of go backwards and kind of scale that up for you. I would say probably 680, well, for sure, 680, 700, 720, 760, and then you're pretty much there.
Okay.
So really you start getting into the 800s and there's not a great benefit other than that maybe we're trying to achieve something that we've already maximized and we don't need to do anymore. And I think that's a common question. So I'm glad that you asked that.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. No, I think that's any question for you.
I don't think so.
Yeah. No, this has been super informative. So
Yeah, because I mean, our lease is up in May of 25, so that's
Okay.
kind of our time frame. We renewed for one more year just because we weren't sure. I just got a new job and I wasn't sure where we were going to be like located, so we're staying for one more year. But then after that, we'll definitely be looking. So our goal is to buy for sure. So
Hey, India, I think you're muted.
I said, and they just got married in March, so it was a pretty busy spring for them.
yes, I'm like,
Oh,
I don't think I have a move in me this year. So yeah.
Well, so I just want to tell you guys, interest rates are nowhere near where they've been for, you know, our folks, our parents, our grandparents. We are really, we were very spoiled for a period of time. But you know what? It's kind of showing up right now. A healthy market would be one where interest rates are in the 5s. So please just kind of keep that in the forefront of your mind. And it doesn't take much, you know, people listen to headlines. So if you catch wind that interest rates are dropping, then everybody floods the market.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you renewed your lease because you needed to enjoy that time with getting married and all the things that go with that.
Yes.
But you can start preparing today. I mean, to be ready. And in some cases, people will break their lease. But I'm not suggesting that's something that you should do. I'm just saying that as you start looking at homes with India, you'll start feeling more enticement to want to make the move quicker, because it's a very exciting move and it's a really exciting
Yeah.
time.
For sure.
Yeah. But otherwise, don't worry too much about rates, guys. It's I've helped more people. I'm shocked how many people I'm helping today that are ready to get on with their lives, and we're putting really good deals together. It's a great honor to work with India. She's smart. She's a good student. It's one of the things that we're really committed to, is always understanding our market. So we're always learning things, and we learn from each other a lot. So I appreciate you being here, and I welcome a conversation in the future. So please keep us, keep us in dialogue with your plans and what your goals are, and let's keep in touch with each other every now and again to see how things are coming along.
Absolutely. Yes, we love India. So she will
Aw,
be our
thanks, guys.
go-to girl when we get to the buying time. So yeah.
She's great.
I've-
She'd be my choice too.
I've known Addison since she was in middle
yeah.
school.
Like
So
5th grade, or
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So it's been a long, yeah, my mom and her are really close. And so yeah, I've known her for so long. So
yeah, so it's awesome.
Perhaps that's
And I can't say enough wonderful things about Selena. She and I have been partnering with each other almost the entire time I've been in real estate, and we've done a lot of transactions together, and my clients just value her so much because she educates and she is very communicative and knows that this process can be confusing and hard, and she just makes it very easy, and her entire team is excellent. So I can't recommend her enough. When you guys are ready, or even getting kind of information like this ahead of time, like, she is absolutely excellent. So certainly when the time is right, we will connect you all together, and I think it'll be a great partnership.
Yeah,
awesome.
it's good. It's going to be fun. And guess what? You can do a consultation anytime. I don't care that you're not buying a house till 2025, because it's going to go by really fast.
Mhm.
So you can go ahead and fill out the application, and we can start with a soft credit pool. And then we can just build a future plan, so that way you have it in your back pocket, because I can hear Cameron's already calculating numbers and trying to
Oh,
work through a budget.
yeah.
And
Oh,
so
yeah. I mainly
that's
was
why-
like, no, you need to be on this call with me, because his
Mhm.
mind is just constantly going with like all that information. Whereas I'm just like, oh, that house is pretty. Like, I don't, he's more of
you
the finance.
know,
So.
that's the sweet spot about the whole thing, guys.
Yes.
That really is. And congratulations on your marriage.
Thank you.
And we're lucky to have somebody that will take over the number part of it. But if you don't verify what you think you know about something, you're going to be scared. So the consultation is not for you to go buy a house tomorrow. The consultation is so you can build a plan and start working
Mhm.
towards it. So y'all
Perfect.
reach out if I can do anything to help you along those lines. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. We
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
guys for coming. You guys have a good
Yes.
Saturday.
Thank
Okay,
you.
y'all too.
Bye.
Bye.
All right.
We probably, did you stop sharing yet or recording?
No, let's see. Recordings.